So we're back again as promised every single day this week and maybe going into next week, depending on what is happening with LK-99. I will have Brian Wang to help us understand, because otherwise most of us wouldn't understand. Brian, lovely to see you again today.
Good to see you, Rene.
All right. And of course, you want to follow Brian in particular on his blog, his science blog. Gets 1 million plus visitors per month. It is considered to be the #1 science blog in the world. And Brian is a noted futurist in addition to that. Explain that again, how you're a noted futurist. What is that exactly?
Pretty much if you spend many years talking about the future and making predictions and stuff, and I've made a lot of public predictions that have come true. There was a future prediction tracking thing by a European guy, and I was one of about like 5 futurists on there. Ray Kurzweil was one of the other ones. So occasionally I get lumped in with some noted futurists. On the website Metaculus, that is a site with about 5,000 or more people participating in predictions on the future, and I'm ranked 47th on there, so that'd be top 1% of the 5,000 people. So so my accuracy rate on that thing is about like 98%, 79% of the predictions. 70% spot on, 20% a bit off.
I see.
But in the details of predictions matter.
Yes, of course. And of course, I'm assuming that if you're going to put something on Metaxas, that you have thought about, I'm sorry?
Metaculus.
Metaculus. Yeah. I'm going to assume that you've thought about that one good and hard before you make that prediction.
Well, actually, like I've only created a few of the questions. Like they have people, a team that create the questions, and then I participate in making my prediction based on what questions I feel like participating in.
I see. All right. Very cool. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hit like if you like what we're doing with this daily report. Yesterday's numbers were extremely good. So people are very interested in the story. I was curious to see how many people would want to watch, and a lot of people did. So let's start. We'll have a little bit of Tesla news at the end, but let's start with an update. What has happened in the last 24 hours on the story?
So there's been a few substantially negative experimental results that gone to preprint. So again, not peer-reviewed. Okay. Onto preprint. There's one by an Indian university group, but they did not succeed in getting levitation. So then, as we discussed yesterday, that's the souffle didn't rise. So if you do a test based on that, then you just said, I got raw material and it's still raw material. So whatever that means. But the Peking University says that they have.
Let's drop back to the Indian University again, just to make sure that I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. They didn't even get what a lot of other people have gotten, which is a piece of material that actually levitated. Partially levitated. So they didn't even get that far.
They didn't get that far.
So that wouldn't be like really any confirmation or failure to confirm. It would be a failure to start.
Right, but then they did. Making their conclusion that they think there's nothing there. So,
all right.
Yeah. So then a Peking University, major Chinese university, they said that they did get some levitation, a little standing up on the side. They say it's not a superconductor. They say it's, maybe some kind of semiconductor. They didn't get diamagnetism. Other people have detected diamagnetism. They didn't get that. And they, again, make the conclusion that no superconductivity there. The fact that they did have some levitation, that means, okay, they got close enough to it that is something, right? But I said before, it's a hard thing to do. In the first few sentences of their thing, here's what we did. They said that they sintered the material, and the Koreans used annealing.
Now, explain, what does that mean?
Different kind of way of it. I think sintering is kind of like, you have some open flame type thing. I'm not quite sure the differences, right? But it's a different way of cooking it.
Different. I see. So just we can assume that, like everything, it's really amazing. I mean, I do have a fairly substantial background in chemistry, having run a plastics manufacturing company for 30 years. That, how long you bake it, at what temperature you bake it, at when you might add some additive to it or not, the purity of the raw material. I mean, so many things go into it. Just like if you're baking, as you mentioned yesterday, a souffle, you got to do it right.
Yeah. So they use sintering, which is, you're taking powders and then you're heating it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, again, it'd be kind of like, we need kind of like see, a video step by step, like, what are you doing,
Right.
versus the other guys. So that, I don't know if that invalidates the result or not, right? But it is different. So it's kind of like, 8 steps, step 2 or step 7, you decide to do something different, which you think is the same thing, but not a pure replication. The other thing, but it's not good news for there's something there side.
Right.
The condensed matter, I guess, condensed matter physics department, I think in the United States, they've been around for like 20 years. They've been, pretty vocal on Twitter saying, judging the stuff. Supposedly they're working with materials, but they haven't released their own measurements. So they talk about stuff being done and their science being better. Their assessment of all the things is that they are putting a fork in LK-99 and saying it's done. That basically it's over. It's not superconducting. The resistance isn't good enough, on and on, right? So a pretty substantial group is willing to say it's over, right? Are all groups saying it's over? No. One group, a substantial one, is saying it's over. There is a certain level of politics in these things. What's the motivation for coming up so strong against it, right? But whatever. Yeah. They've made something which, if it, the science winds back the other way, then that's egg on their face. But they could be right. Yeah. So then they can get a kudo for being one of the first major groups to say it's over.
Right.
So we're still waiting for the original material, original guys to do stuff. So 2 groups, University of Korea and University of Maryland, they got a co-author there, have actual materials from the original group, not a replication, original material. Right. The University of Korea said that they had replicated the crystalline structure, right? So they haven't tested
replicated or tested it and
tested the crystalline structure,
right? And
said this part of the original paper, again, we're using your materials,
right?
So you use your materials, you measure the crystalline structure. We have your part of your same materials. We got the same crystalline structure,
right?
So that confirms that part of the work was not sloppy and that it was correct, right? But still, some days away from whatever their tests indicate.
Right. Okay. And Maryland, anything on Maryland?
No information from Maryland. Maryland has one of the co-authors.
Oh, okay.
So the Korean got a U.S. and Maryland, I think American Korean, to be part of their team so they can get into U.S. journals.
Okay. So then one of the papers that I saw on your website today was talking about the potential that it needs more oxygen.
Yeah.
So
Lanzhou University in China, they did the density function theory computational analysis, right? With a bunch of other stuff. They have like 2 paragraphs describing, here's the package of software we did, here's all the other stuff, a bunch of details, which means something to the people who do the computational simulations. It's Greek to me as to whatever they were talking about. But they were specifying, here's specifically how we did this thing. And then they determined that oxygen is critical to this process. So we mentioned before, annealing versus sintering.
Right.
Lanzhou says, based on their analysis, that oxygen is critical into it. They recommend in the annealing process, do not anneal it in a vacuum. Anneal it in an oxygen, perhaps oxygen-rich environment.
Got it.
In order to get the oxygen, because they say if the oxygen isn't in there, they tried, okay, our theory is oxygen enhances the process. So they removed, in the computation, let's get rid of 75%, 3 out of every 4 oxygens from this thing. And then the bands which show there might be superconductivity go away.
Yeah.
So if you don't, anneal it with oxygen, their model says you got nothing.
Yeah.
So that could go to some experiments that fail where you didn't have enough oxygen. You chose to anneal in a sealed vacuum tube. Right. For whatever reason. Right. So, I'm not sure if that was in the, to anneal vacuum or oxygen in the steps in the original paper, but it should be amended now to say, try it with oxygen. Got it. So again, how many of these papers did that way? That goes to how did you perform this souffle baking? Souffle it with oxygen. Right. Yeah.
Right. All right. So, and while you've been putting up your posts, I've been reading everything that I can find online. I didn't find anything that was useful outside of the ones that you've put up. So that doesn't mean anything because I wouldn't recognize it as easily as you would, but I at least am trying to make sure that I'm doing a backup job to see if there's anything out there that might be missed. So anything else that is useful at this point based on the last course? Okay.
I think I'm still want to wait for, all the peer review things. So it looks like we may have some that are peer review negative, peer review positive, and that kind of thing. One comment I would make, having followed things like cold fusion for decades or molecular nanotechnology and other science, which was ended up not mainstream. Although, cold fusion is not considered a negative area of inquiry in Japan, in the United States and many other places it is. It's the kind of thing where, in nanotechnology, when Bill Gates was president, they were going to give a few $1 billion to molecular nanotechnology. There was a really popular book, Engine of Creation by Eric Drexler. He was saying if we put the atoms and molecules where we want, that we can have incredible super materials like carbon nanotubes and like graphene. And Richard Smalley won the Nobel Prize for his discovery of carbon nanotubes. And he was at the Rice University over in Texas. And then he came on the stage one time at a big presentation with him and Eric Drexler. And then Eric Smalley said that he didn't think that you could do the molecular nanotechnology. You couldn't move things. He just some fat finger problem. But basically, you couldn't place things in the right way. But you could do carbon nanotubes. He said that he would be making miles and miles of it where you roll it up like a garden hose, big reels and reels of it. He said that like 1999 or something like that. And then he got billions of dollars to do that from Rice University. So his thing got funded. The molecular nanotechnology side didn't get funded. It was about a few $1 billion up for grabs, and Bill Gates and the leadership said that they would do that. Then Intel and probably some other people got into the back room as they're about to pass the bill, and then suddenly the bill got changed to nanotechnology is defined as anything smaller than a 100 meter by 100 meter cube. So 100 meter on a cube side, 100 nanometer on a cube side, right? So if you say, let's just say a cubic nanometer is a cubic meter, you just expand everything up, right? So if I go 100 meters up and 100 meters wide, instead of talking about a baseball, which would be a molecule, I'm talking about a baseball stadium.
Right.
Which happens to include things like roads would qualify as something, which would be like the lines of lithography on a computer chip. So that meant regular chemistry, regular lithography, Intel to work qualifies. So then you dump money on the established guys who have all the money and they wanted more money. And then the new stuff, the potentially breakthrough stuff, got starved for money. Right? So I think that we need to not pre-select the winners that we don't know anything about, where things are unknown, where something's interesting, we should continue to investigate it before saying, there's 10 things here, I'm going to listen to these guys because they're loudest or speak the best.
Right.
And then I'm going to diss these other guys, even though it's like, we're just trying to figure out what's going on. Right?
So just to be clear on something that has nothing to do with science, you talked about Bill Gates a couple of times there. You said when Bill Gates was
Bill Clinton. Bill
Clinton. So insert Bill Clinton.
No, sorry.
wherever you said Bill Gates. Okay, that'll clear a lot up. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so I think that we need. This is something I mentioned yesterday. Something that is potentially so important,
right? And
that these tests are not expensive or difficult to do.
Right.
They should thoroughly dig into it, figure out what's going on, especially because there's many of the computational models that say, if I get the copper, there was another paper that said if you get the copper, or the LK-99 thing might not work, but this configuration of copper might work, or with more oxygen. That if we haven't found the needle in the haystack, we may have found the zone where needles in the haystack are.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So finish looking. Again, not that expensive. Do some stuff where interesting things are happening. Finish it up. If other groups say I got other important things to do, fine. But it shouldn't be an invalid point of inquiry to really figure this out.
All right. Okay. Well, let's move on to a couple of pieces of Tesla news. So yesterday we were talking about Zach Kirkhorn leaving. I had heard that he was worth 50 million. You then said he was worth, I think, 100 million. And now Bloomberg is reporting that he's worth 560 million.
Yeah.
Do you have any sources or any information that it doesn't really matter, but I thought that was a pretty wide range.
So for these wealth estimates of billionaires and stuff like that, unless they're super egotistical and want, or the ex-president would want to say, okay, I want my number to be accurate and as high as possible. They would say, okay, here's all the stuff I invested in, and see assets, expenses, here's my net worth. Right. The Forbes and Fortune lists are in general approximations where you can say, based on your publicly traded and known shares, I can then back into approximation. I'm assuming that your public shares are your money. Yeah. Right. But there are billionaires, in Asia, billionaires around DC, who come up as sub-billionaires based on what is publicly available. Yeah. It's also like, how rich would our estimate of Michael Corleone be? Probably not good. Yeah, right. But that Kirkhorn, we know that he has a little less than 200,000 publicly disclosed in the form filing shares of Tesla. Right. Plus, he sold an amount equal to $24 million. I see. And he was making $21 million per year in salary. Okay. Right. So, and the other thing was he was master of coin. Yes. So he would have had, lunch or dinners with Elon, or, meetings with Elon, where Elon might yak about, oh, I'm going to do this thing with Doge, right? Before 1000x. Right. So master of coin might have invested in Doge. Right. So in terms of how much money he's got, I say the 50 million is the 200,000 known shares of Tesla. Got it. Right. Not including the fact that I guess he sold $24 million in Tesla and then he just pissed it away. And then, he $21 million a year. $21 million a year, that's all gone. Right. Taxes, whatever. Right. Yeah. And so he's only left with his, the shares of Tesla. I don't think that's the case. Probably not. And then the fact that he was involved in crypto, the big thing was how good is this CFO of a Fortune 500 company and investing his own money.
Right.
That's the big variability, right? For some sports athletes, for some musicians, you can say, I don't give them any credit for investing anything of anything. Right. But for Zach, I would say
he might be pretty good at it.
He might be pretty good at it.
Okay. The stock market seems to have now pretty much blown off the entire Zach Kirkhorn leaving thing. It was up this morning against the trend. Well, not up. It wasn't down as much as the market crushed this morning, and finally ended up almost getting back in the green. It had recovered most of the negative yesterday morning. So I'm beginning to think that maybe the investing community has decided, yes, he was a good guy, and yes, we liked him, and yes, he was probably really good at his job, but he's not critical. The boss is not going to be critical.
Right. Yeah. Right. I would agree. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So then let's see. There was another thing I wanted to talk to you about from yesterday. Oh, darn. I'm forgetting what it was. That's not good.
Well, I can. So it was about Tesla. There's news about the Cybertruck. Everyone's talking about that being released. Everyone's trying to estimate that. There's some tests of the Semi coming up. So that's a.
Oh, that's right. Nobody's talking about that.
Yeah. So I wrote about that
because we're the only ones that care about semi-truck.
Right. Right. So there's this organization, nonprofit, I think, that does tests of fleets of trucks. So they do an annual or biannual thing where they do that. So now in September, they're going to test, and it will include 21 or some number of the Tesla semis that Pepsi has. So Pepsi made a video showing that, interviewing the drivers, and drivers say, yeah, we do 3 of the trucks run a full load over 450 miles. Yeah. Right. And then, the recharging thing, all that kind of stuff. So that seems to validate all the points about how good the semi-truck is. But this particular 3-week test is, the whole point is to get real world numbers of, like, I'm picking up a load, I'm driving it. I'm recording every little bit about how much charging I'm doing, so that it'll be like, to the kilowatt hour, how much do we put in, how far did it go, how much was it pulling? So all that stuff is so that the doubting fleet owners, Walmart or whatever, can look at it and say, oh yeah, based on real hardcore numbers, real loads, real workload, real drivers, all that kind of stuff, give us the full rundown. So it's a far more accurate commercial report on these products. So it'll be, a fleet of Teslas, fleets of Cascadias, all the other trucks, probably, non-electric trucks as well will be in there as well, where you'll get detailed numbers. So none of this, why didn't Tesla tell us something? It's like, you're going to get an independent set of tests, and there'll be some live reporting in September and live numbers, but then there'll be like the detailed, 500,000 page report.
Right.
Coming up the end. So they'll probably give some like short report for the freebies thing, but the guys who are really interested pay me for my really good report, which is similar to what Sam Monroe does, where basically he tears it all down. He'll give us information on video, but then the real report, pay him $250,000, $100,000, whatever, for this detailed analysis, so you can make a really informed decision. So,
well, on that subject, then I actually wanted to ask you this anyway, and I just came to my mind. So they reported the other day they wanted to build these 9 megacharger stations with quite a number of megachargers in each one, spread between Texas and California. And it seemed to me like if those megachargers can charge 90% in 25 minutes, that was a lot of megachargers.
Yes. Yeah. So, and other people have done the analysis, and basically it looks like Tesla's looking for subsidies where this is like their route for
Yeah.
SpaceX and Tesla and stuff like that, where you're going from California and Texas to have this thing. So it's part of a route. You can have the bare bones route across the United States. You'd probably want 5 major highways going east-west, 7 going this way, and then people that get across. You'd want more because there's, I don't know, 5-10% of the market is pilot truck stops, and there's about 600 of those, right? Warren Buffett paid like $8 billion for pilot, and you can update those things. So there needs to be ballpark 6,000
total
truck stops. But then each one, you've been to the truck stops, they're huge, and they got like pumps all over. It's acres of stuff, and the electric truck stops may need to be bigger and have more infrastructure. You may need more of them. So because of the nature of what they're doing. So we may end up needing 20,000, 30,000 of them or more. But then have a lot more mega packs for each one, 1 to 5. So if there were ultimately replace the whole fleet, 4 million semi trucks in the United States, we still may need 800,000 mega packs to support all that, unless you do more straight from the grid type things, and probably a mix of that. But a ballpark might be that high, and then you'd have, if you had 20 per thing, you may need like 40,000 truck stops, or if you have like 100 mega packs per big truck stop, then maybe you only need like 8,000.
I see. But the size of the number of chargers per station that was indicated would suggest that Elon is planning for a fairly large fleet of trucks going up and down that particular corridor.
well, if you're assuming that you're going from Austin to California has 10 to 15% of all Tesla EV sales, right? Model Ys,
Yes,
and
right.
then you could have Cybertrucks and that kind of thing. So your main production is in Austin. So then if I'm shipping 10% of my vehicles, so if this is done in a year's time or 2 years' time, we're looking at maybe 10 million vehicles that are going. So then California's share might be 1.5 million, right? Yeah. So that means if I got those on 5 per load of semi, or 10 per load of semi, then we got like 150,000 trips with semi trucks taking cars over there. So
just for their internal use alone, they're going to need a lot of semi trucks.
Right.
So I remembered my other question.
Okay, great.
We're talking about Elon going to the cage fight.
Yeah.
And you indicated something that I didn't know anything about and didn't have time to research. So I'm just going to ask you for a little more color. So he's had some kind of a neck or back operation on 2 previous occasions, did you say?
Yeah. So Elon was at a party, and I think Chamath and some of the other guys, his rich friends, were there. And they had a sumo wrestler there, a professional sumo wrestler. And then Elon, after an unknown number of drinks, decided to engage the professional sumo wrestler who was there for entertainment in a sumo fight. And then he got his neck hurt. And he had 2 operations. He had some metal plate between the 5th and 6th vertebrae or something like that.
Oh, he did get hurt.
Yeah. So he got a metal plate there. He said, a lot of pain and stuff like that. So that's the MRI, is to check on the plate in his neck.
I see.
And to make any adjustments to it.
I see.
So, but it shows a few things. One is the injury they had, and the injury that could be compounded by violent stupidity, is a substantial real risk. That if Mark Zuckerberg was to give a guillotine choke to Elon to knock him out, that could mess up the steel plate in his neck, right? 2, the many years ago sumo fight shows how impulsive Elon is and how crazy he can do something, right? The last point which you meant before, the whole insurance doctor thing.
Right.
Some doctor who just fixed up his steel plate good to go for a cage match.
They're not going to do it.
I don't see a doctor doing that. And so it's like, which one of the Simpsons cartoon doctors, like you have the Hibbert, the calm, black guy, or the other one with the mustache and who represents the bad doctor, I forget the name of that other doctor, but the crazy representative of quacks.
Yes.
So yeah.
All right. Well, that was the other question. And I know that there's way more important. Well, maybe there's not a more important question than Elon being able to get a doctor to say, you ain't doing this. And I think the Tesla community would breathe a sigh of relief.
I think there's doctors, and then there's board of directors, insurance. I think those are 3 or 4 things that have to go, because I can't see the board, key man insurance, all that kind of stuff. If you're being that reckless, what I'm sure Elon is key man in SpaceX, Tesla, all these different companies, and then they're going to say, "Oh yeah, board of directors, go ahead, Elon." I know that a lot of them rubber stamp stuff, but it's kind of like, and then will Kimball, talk to his mom, who said, don't let him do it. He said,
she's already said she doesn't want him to do it.
Yeah,
I think all of his ex-wives have chimed in too at this point.
Right.
All right. Well, that is great. I thank you again, Brian. And again, folks, our intention is to do this daily, as long as this stays a live issue. If somebody puts a real fork in it and says, absolutely not, well, that's probably the end of the series. But until that happens, I think probably at least for a week or so, we're going to try to do this every day.
Well, even if the various groups put a fork in it, I will still follow it, because there's still, like I said, end of this month, next month, the original team has to report some stuff. Hopefully they have a peer review paper. And again, these things aren't in peer review papers yet.
Right.
And, the consensus is not done. Plus, even if the one needle in the haystack is flawed, there's other things there, and it will take more time to figure this out. Right. Again, it could go into a backwater. I'll let you know if people want to say, wake me when whatever, I will wake you when whatever happens, because I'll keep looking at it. Okay.
All right. Okay, folks, that's it. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit, follow my Tesla weekend. Follow the other Brian. Follow all the Bryans. But anyway, follow
Next Big Future
on nextbigfuture.com, and he'll appreciate that. All right. And so thank you, Brian, again. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.